Welcome to Calgary Culture, the Perspectives YYC podcast, a series of conversations with a series of local creators as we try to get serious about culture here in Calgary. In this episode, I sit down with Taylor Odishaw-Dyke, aka T.O., aka Fake James, aka I'm sure 100 other names, and now the creator of F.L.I Productions. We met initially through Austin Kemmons, co-conspirator and street artist, and together with Ty Javas we built Wake Motif, a private invite-only art, music, performance, house party event that occurred in March of this year. What an incredible event. And now from Wake we moved to the Zoo. Tio came over to my dining room and we spoke about energy exchange, the necessity of an environment of collaboration, humility, ego death, the future of Calgary culture. Yet another example of why I'm convinced that Calgary is about to explode with genuine creative energy. If you're out there doing some chores, driving alone on an Albertan highway, zoning out on a couch or on your bed, thank you for connecting with us. And I hope you'll hear this message. The next step for Calgary is collaboration and interaction. Send us your thoughts on our conversation and our vision. Share, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow. DM me for a coffee. Input your own creativity. Whatever you do, don't just let it pass you by. And if you're interested in attending the zoo, hashtag Zoo Motif. Keep your eyes out on affiliated artists. Exclusive invites are coming. The event occurs August 17th, and it'll be headlined by this episode's special musical voice, Vanilla Sun, at Vanilla Sun on IG, who's hosting and headlining the event itself. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Tio. You are actually my first guerrilla-style recording interview, Taylor.
Ooh,
It's exciting stuff, right?
'tis the season.
Welcome.
How's it going? This is very exciting. We're going live with the guerrilla mode.
Yeah, I've got a cheap lavalier with 20 feet of cable wrapped around itself, recording into my iPhone and in my kitchen. But I got you out here, so let's get going. Taylor, maybe you can introduce yourself so that people know who I'm speaking with today.
Okay. Well, over the past few years, I feel like more people would know me as Fake James, but I'm taking a step back from that project and putting a lot more time into F.L.I Productions, which is something that we've been developing and rebranding over the years, just trying to get into the right format so that we can host the craziest house concerts and kind of push the boundaries of what people have come to expect in the performance arts world. Moving forward, I'd like to be more and more involved in that industry.
And how did we meet? Like, how do I know Fake James?
Well, I've been playing around Calgary, played 33 shows in 2017. 2018, I kind of put more work into fewer shows, put on some fun events. But I guess what I'm really trying to focus on right now is, you may have caught us in March at Wake Motif. We put on the first installment of the Motif events, and we co-presented with Perspectives YYC, and we had a lot of involvement from a lot of different people, and we brought together a really cool group, and everyone had made some extremely momentous memories there. So
it was nuts. I mean, I'm old and I haven't been to a house party in a super long time.
yeah.
We met through your PIC, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, Austin.
Absolutely. Austin is a key figure in this whole operation. He kind of has the ambition that I feel like I used to have. He has the optimism that we could all have a little bit more of. And so working with Austin is great, because he'll never really shut down an idea. He'll never be the guy who says that's not possible. But the thing is, I don't really mind moving forward hearing that phrase more often, because I want people to question whether or not it's possible. And that way, when we make it happen, everyone who's there is going to be just even more blown away by the fact that we pulled it off. That creates more hype. And the third installment, we'll have to take it up another level. And that's when people will be looking at it and just going, if anyone can do it, it's these guys.
Well, that's the thing that to the point. So getting back to your point, it's interesting bringing that up. When you and Austin contacted me to build or to collaborate on Wake Motif, I remember we set up that meeting at your place at the secret location.
Yeah.
And you started going into your vision about what you believed would be a cool, dope intro show. And I sat there thinking, what the fuck is this guy thinking? Like 2 floors, how many acts, VIP, and then we had that conversation. We're all throwing ideas at each other. Yeah. And like you were mentioning, I walked away from that thinking, I mean, it was obvious that you had done this sort of thing before, at least in some scope, because you had, some structure that you were approaching it with.
Right.
But at the same time, I actually questioned myself. Like you didn't give us, we had like a month to put it together.
Oh yeah.
And I was just thinking, is this something that can actually happen? Can we make VIP stations where you can have private performances? Can you bring how many acts together to play on 2 different levels in a way that people could actually move around the house and still all enjoy, the experience of being there? And then I remember showing up that night because, my health has become an issue this year. So I don't think I actually physically saw, we texted and emailed in between, but I don't think I physically saw you until the show. Mm-hmm. Walking around the back of the house, getting carted by your bud at the door and thinking, holy shit, like this is a real thing. And I got to say, man, I did take some pictures there, but it was nuts. I've come across some folks in coffee shops and meeting artists that casually mention it. Once I bring up that, we were doing it together, they're like, oh, I heard about that. Or they were there or whatever it was. But it was killer.
Yeah, that was the funniest part. Was at the back door entrance, we had the ping pong table split in half and turned up on its side to create a boundary, so kind of like a lobby. And then at the end of the hall, we kind of had an office chair with a bungee strap across to keep people from walking in, and then we had the bouncers there accepting tickets, and they were hollering at all the artists because the artist would have to come down and let the person in, and it was and then the flow of the night was pretty amazing. We had a secret opener who no one knew it was going to be, and it turned out it was Wyatt C. Lewis, who is a blues singer in town.
Incredible.
And then he brought out his band, and so they were the secret headliners. So him and his band were headlining, and we had the secret room in the back where we did the spoken word, and that was kind of the one concept that we wanted to kind of surprise people with, was the spoken word element. And it's just something everyone these days, especially in our city, they think that if something is cool, it's got to be loud. And we kind of wanted to change that trend a little bit and show how many people there are that would rather attend something that is more enlightening and relaxed. So when you have that type of community together, you feel a lot safer. You feel very appreciated. And that kind of reminds me of at one point during the night, there were a few girls who I had never met before, but they were obviously good friends with somebody, because that's the way that we promoted was through word of mouth, and every artist really only brought their closest friends. One of these girls who had never met most of the people there was worried that one of them maybe had something slipped into their drink. She wasn't feeling well. And the situation was diffused really easily because I just reassured them that the only people here are the tightest group within each artist's friend group. And they're all here for the same reason. And that is to appreciate the art, appreciate each other. And when you make that your MO ahead of time and that's your energy, then that's the type of people you bring out. And that's where you get the trust and you feel like everyone can enjoy themselves and be entirely safe the whole time, so.
That was the thing too that struck me when we were conceptualizing it. I mean, you were pretty strong on that point at the beginning. I mean, we can maybe go into the idea of how you want to structure the tickets as being so personal, dedicating a certain number to each artist so that it became a peer group. I mean, maybe there's a term, maybe the term motif has some unique meaning for you. I think that one of the fears I had when first conceptually thinking about a house party, even if it's supposed to be a dope art event, is the, stereotype of like a house party, of things just going apeshit and people not being pleasant and not there to collaborate, but just to be dicks, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not my experience. I mean, I had to leave as usual early because I'm old, but I think by the time I left at 12, I mean, the vibe in that place, between moving upstairs, downstairs, the dancing, the rock music, like everything, people were paying attention, and I thought there was an amazing aura, if you will. But tell me, like, I mean, there's some intent and some planning around that, but what gave you maybe the inspiration of even doing something like this, having the idea of, tickets, of motif, of having a small personal collective of artists that you know and trust, of having the confidence of telling a woman at a party that she could feel safe, because this is the whole point. It wasn't there for people to get their drink on. It was there for people to experience art.
Absolutely. I think to answer your question, the best way would be to kind of get to the roots of where it began, and that would be it started with artists. And as an artist, you try and put on events that are going to be positive for you and positive for the other bands on the bill. Basically, your portfolio of performances, if you will. Something that you can look back on that felt right. That can be a building block for your career. And there's also events that you put on where you were just involved, you were invited to play, you need to make the $200 to play a set, so you get involved, but you felt out of place. It was not the right type of event for you. Over time, you evolve and you start to get a better idea of what you want, the type of audience you want, type of venue you want. Everything becomes clearer the more you do it. Eventually, we decided that there were a couple key elements of these types of shows that we're throwing on. One of them would be rooted within the ticket sales for each artist. Now, the basis of this is business, being in the entertainment industry, the business behind moving tickets is offering the maximum amount of value to the people who are buying the tickets. Pre-sale tickets is never easy, no matter who you are. And what we wanted to do was challenge the artists that we're involving to value their art form enough to basically demand a price for experiencing it, to value the time that you put into creating it, rehearsing it, and performing it. You want people to appreciate that. You desperately want people to say, absolutely, I'll pay for this. And it's tough. There are a lot of situations. Like I said, we go back to the roots is, as an artist, you're trying to set yourself up in the right situation. There are times when you're you don't even know the other bands on the bill. You're not familiar with the venue, and you're not comfortable with asking your friends to spend money on it. And that's a sad truth, to be able to want to put so much time into your art form and not have the confidence to expect your friends to pay for it. And so when we get ourselves into a perfect, just the right scenario, that's when you start to challenge yourself as a business person. You cannot expect to be an independent musician where there's so much competition and so much oversaturation without learning the business behind it. And now here we are, and it was amazing to see the artists rally at Wake Motif. Hayden Goosen, who is now goes by Modern Patio, I'm really excited about his project. The push that he had, the kid's not even 18, but he's been just hustling in every single way you can imagine. He has been creating his own vintage clothing line, doing pop-up shows, and creating music. I think within the last 3 days leading up to the event, even the day of the event, he had anywhere from 1 to 2 dozen people that committed to coming and paying to be there. And you know what? Those people, they didn't regret it. They had one of a kind experience. Now they trust that next time Modern Patio is playing a set, that it's worth it. And that's how we want all of our artists to feel. So if they have the value to offer, that's how they make money.
Staying on this, as an artist myself, and as you speak about it, I also have a lot of self-reflection about this. I mean, what were those conversations like? What is your, let's say, experience in hindsight? Maybe, I don't know if we need to go artist by artist, depending if they're all positive or negative. Did that factor into curatorial process? Did you pick artists that you knew that were sort of ready to push that way? And what is that like to talk to artists about respecting themselves as a business and adding, whether it's money or this transfer of whatever it is, right? But this concept of self-worth, their art means something to their close friends and to the other population. Yeah, what was that experience like with your crew?
When you look at it as an artist, you have to take a step back and try to make a list of the people that really value your art in the first place. Turn that into your group A. Continue to reach out and push the boundaries and expand your list. But it takes so much time for every artist to develop a relationship with these people and show that you value them and what their interests are. Hope to get that same interest in return in what you have been caring about so much. And I mean, just to sort of get back to your question, I think to be talking to these artists and pushing them, and you see the wheels turning, and you see the barricades coming up, and that's mostly because of bad experiences trying to move tickets. I bet you 80% of the bands out there who've been in a situation where, or even hip hop artists, they have a big opportunity to open for a big name at a club, and the more tickets they move, the better set time they get, or the more tickets, the more likelihood that they'll have another gig in the future. There's a lot of pressure, and it comes down to trusting the process. If you have years, I'd say it takes to plant the seed in a friend where they can start to see that you're not just about receiving, you're about giving. It takes a lot of time to water that seed, and that means, going out and supporting them when they need it. That's just one example, but it's an everyday thing, talking to them about things other than your event. It's about your energy. It's not necessarily about what you need from them, because they're going to sense what you need if you just are on their level. I've been trying to help as many artists, not make the same mistakes that I did, which was you can absolutely ruin the soil, the seed you planted in, by overwatering. You'll kill your plant by watering too much because you're trying too hard. But there's a perfect balance there for these artists to find. And I think the bottom line is you have to know that what you're offering is cool. The experience you're offering is cool. And that they're going to walk away from it being, I'm so glad I came. And that was what we had at Wake Motif in March. We had so many people walking up to me, to the other artists, and saying, this was exactly what I needed, or, I haven't seen anything like this in so long, and just comments like that. And it gets you really excited. And I mean, off the record, I was pretty high on psychedelics towards the end of the night, and all I could think about was how grateful I was for everyone who was there. Every time someone would say something like that, like, oh man, like, I can't believe you guys pulled this off, blah blah blah, all I could say to myself was, don't allow this to fill up your ego. Don't allow this to pump your tires. This isn't about you. But at the same time, it's very inspiring to hear people say that it was a one-of-a-kind experience, and it makes you say to yourself, like, we're so proud that we were able to turn an idea in 6 weeks into something that was unforgettable for the artists and for the patrons. The question in your head starts to run, I mean, maybe it's just me because I was high, but it just kept going through my head, like, why did you do this? How did you pull it off? And it was just, the only answer I had as I was just smiling at myself in the mirror was, no one else was doing it. No one else was creating that community, blending and merging these different groups of amazing people. And so we're going to take that to the next level in August, and we're going to bring together the skateboard community, because we know that they love music and a lot of musicians love skateboarding. And it's kind of just this simple, easy merger that I think is going to take place. And this is just the first step.
First of all, nothing's off the record because we're recording all of it. So that's your error. Secondly, I'm excited. We talked a little bit briefly about what you're planning to do in August. It is, of course, insane. And I hope that as we try to put the pieces together, that like Wake Motif, that it will naturally evolve, whether it's exactly as you, likely not how you're envisioning it, but the intent becomes something that's amazing. What's fascinating about you talking about your self-reflection is, I mean, you're a pretty young guy, this self-awareness to try to not let it be about you, and actually using the word ego and essentially coming from a space of trying to be humble. That's something that I think every artist has a lot of trouble with. Maybe having a upper meta view as a planner and event coordinator might have changed how you're perceiving Wake Motif. But I don't know, is there something you think specifically that's happened to you in your past that you reflect on it in that way? And this didn't become like, this is because I killed it. This is because this is at my house, because this is something that I knew was going to hit, and these are people that I selected, and this is because this sequence happened because of my thoughts, and to separate yourself at least at a certain level away from that, I think is really important. But why do you think? I mean, is there something you think that's happened to you, or a part of the way you're raised, or the way that you are as an artist, that's occurred to you? I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's the only reason I think, a second motif event can actually occur.
Well, yeah, I mean, the humbling experiences are numerous, I think, for everybody. It doesn't take long for life to throw you another curveball. Obviously, since I had a bunch of momentum in 2017 and felt like I was moving quicker than I was expected to be moving as an artist. And it feels amazing, and for people to give you the energy that you get when you're performing live, and it feels amazing, or when, there's so many different memories that I can think of that, were such pinnacles of my young career as a musician. Like you say, there were obviously some humbling experiences along the way. Realizing that you do have to take care of yourself. One specific example would be when I started to realize that I had pretty bad tinnitus in my ears from all the performing and from the work with the power tools that I do. It seems like a small thing, but it really brought me down. And that wasn't the only thing in my life at the time that was taking me down, but that seemed to be like the nail in the coffin, like the newest level of hell for me was to have the only thing that I live for be limited by me not taking care of myself and just regretting that so dreadfully, and just being taken down that. I remember I wrote a song, and this was only 6 months ago, so this is still some fresh pain, some fresh cuts. Writing a song and just loving it and blasting it and it's the only way that you can escape the ring is by listening to things, to music, to just white noise. And so silence is your worst enemy. And I would always play this song because I made the most of the pain of discovering my tinnitus by channeling it into this song, and just loving those moments of reflecting. Other artists can relate when you create something that you just feel like is otherworldly and can't believe it came from your mind. In listening back to it, it's one of the greatest feelings. Zoo, the dance producer from California at ZHU Zoo, he said that exact thing. He said, my favorite feeling is to listen to music that I've created. And so that was the only escape for me for a little while. And then magically one day that song, that recording session disappeared off my hard drive. And just, when I thought I couldn't be taken any lower, it was like, yeah, my only escape is gone. Deal with it. I had a conversation with a friend at a show, a handmade show at King Eddie. And I basically said, what's made me the person I am in the past year has been taught this level of humility, just having my ego destroyed. People have heard of ego death. That's exactly what I went through. And it helped me ultimately to know that I'm unworthy of most of the love that I get, and yet people just keep giving it, and this feeling of grace, that's an amazing trait for someone to display. And I'm blessed to have a number of people in my life that would give regardless of whether I'm worthy of it. They just give because they know my intent is positive. There's been many reminders to keep the ego out of it, definitely. And that's what I have to do. And it's just like life will give you lessons over and over until you learn them. And so choosing to be humble is, a very proactive thing for me these days. It's like at the top of my head, along there with having no self-pity for when shit's fucked, having no greed when you feel like you aren't receiving enough. Ego death is a top priority for me, as not just as an artist or a facilitator, but as a person. I just, it doesn't help anything. It's ugly, So I believe that. And I don't know, there's a lot of people that probably have gained a lot of success and would say that their ego is, just part of their persona. And I'm jealous that people can flex that. I wish that I was the one who reached that pinnacle at this point in my life. But to quote a song by Benjamin Clementine that I recently learned on piano, it's, though my good days are far gone, though they will surely come back one morn, so I won't complain. And that's kind of how I feel, and how I'm challenging myself to build something even cooler and even more prosperous with F.L.I Productions, is to bring the good days back, to reach another pinnacle in my life and create a lot of outstanding memories for my peers as well.
That's great. I mean, I can't help as a parent too think about, I don't know what your relation to your family is, but I remember walking into your house and you just kind of like roaming for every room, and we're going to be here and here, and your dad's sitting there and your brothers, and you have a fairly large family. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, they don't care.
Yeah.
And then I asked one of your brothers, and Taylor's this is just how he's always been. Mm-hmm. But that acceptance and that, to be able to use your house in that way is fascinating. I think that the environment in which either you were raised or there you find yourself now, the company that you keep, knowing Austin too, Austin's just a chill, positive cat.
Totally, man. That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about that. I don't know, how old are you, Taylor, now?
26.
So at 26, I'm 41 now. My life broke at 38, and I still don't know how to be humble. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to hear from you that reflection, that pursuit into finding maybe what I'm terming that sense of peace instead of sense of success. Now, even listening to your story, I was about to challenge you midway that the so-called artists that project that ego is why they got. Whenever I see those people in candid interviews, I don't see peace. I see the concept of success and, you know, whether the fur coat lining and their bling and whatever mansion they're living in. But for the most part, when I meet people of that nature, particularly an artist, I mean, you'll know that too. There's so much role, that tortured soul. You know?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because Chet Faker, or his new alias Nick Murphy, which is his real name that he reverted to, he just came through town, played Palace Theater about a month ago. And you saw that tortured soul coming out. It was like it was like Johnny Cash revisited, because I was a huge fan of Chet Faker and his album Built on Glass from 2014. He's, top 3 favorite artists for so many years. And as he kind of went through his evolution as an artist and went back to his old name, started composing music that was more like pop. Well, he went through a funk phase, and now he's into more of like a pop soul blend. I don't know what to call it. It's tough for me to define it because I don't enjoy it. The funny thing is, I think a lot of people would agree with me. His performance at Palace was kind of ridiculous. It was kind of like a falling star. There's no peace, absolutely no peace. The most entertaining part was him kicking over his keyboard stand, just kicking all his gear over, clearly wasted. His most famous song, Talk Is Cheap, is what everyone was waiting for. And when he sat down to play it, he was just like fiddling and fumbling around on his piano, and it just didn't sound right. I don't know. I think you were right as far as tortured soul. There was just something going on there where he hasn't found the peace. I mean, and maybe he's learning the whole ego death thing as we speak, because, clearly his journey isn't over yet.
Through all of the, I suppose, spiritual readings and stuff that I've been going through to try to, find myself. One of the concepts that I've been maybe obsessing a little bit over recently is this idea of roles and how we create stress for ourselves. So for example, in your case, there's you as the role that you think you have to be for your parents, you as the role that you think you have to be as a performer that's known as Fake James, you as the role as the person that's coordinating, curating F.L.I Productions, and whether they're actually in tune with whatever your spiritual sense is. And that's a really fucking crazy question, because not to get too much into these pseudo-scientific, pseudo-psychological, because I am not trained and I am not smart enough to talk about that at that level. But when I reflect on myself, when I'm sitting in front of a computer, or maybe before that, I go out and I street shoot or I take pictures, then I get home, and then if I'm in front of the computer and I'm mashing it together, there's one feeling like you were describing earlier about listening to the music after. But then that's not the same person that has this fear of printing it, and then the person that has a fear of displaying it, which is a different person than the person that started Perspectives, and the person that, or even my role as a husband or my role as a father. Yeah. And those change not just day to day, but I'm finding like I'm unstable as fuck. Like they could be hour to hour, minute to minute. I could wake up in the morning and be at peace and run around a jungle gym with my kid. And then, 3 hours later, I could become this militant, selfish, angry person. But with the artist, it's a fascinating one because there are so many interactive pieces, the art for itself, the art for other people. You're talking too about encouraging maybe your friends and your fellow collaborators to reach out to their friends and say, this has value. But that's a frightening question too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just life, like finding how to balance those things as much as possible.
Yeah, trying to find the contentment. It's always it's an ongoing battle. For most people, I bet. Let's say you go on a date and everything goes perfectly and have an amazing night. The next morning you're driving around after breakfast feeling great, and it doesn't even take 2 hours, and you're just into a negative rut and losing your momentum. And I think everyone has their own tactics with dealing with that, but I adopted some mentalities lately that have been helping, and that's letting go of time. Stop thinking so hard about wasted time, or whether you feel like you're spinning your tires, putting in so much effort, not getting distance over time is like the way we measure our lives. That's like the standard measurement. how far have we got in the past year? And then you also comparing yourself to everyone else, your peers, how far have I gotten compared to them in the past year? And it's just everything comes down to time and you stressing about that. I think that for me to overcome that is just trying to find the contentment where you can believe that time is not as important as you think it is. The now is not the only important moments of your life. It's like time is a path coming from behind you, going through you forward. And just to be in the wave, to be content with that, to kind of believe that at the end of the waterfall, there's going to be a celebration, And I think for us this August, this is the next checkpoint in the wave right now, is we're working up towards the zoo motif. There will be a zoo. It'll be a wild party. We're switching things up, creating a little more movement, a little more kinetic energy rather than potential energy. We're trying to save it up at Wake Motif, some really mellow energies. And now I think at the end of the summer here, I think people are going to want to let loose, and hopefully, everyone who was at Wake will come back and jump right back in the wave and just let go. We want to create an experience where people can let go, be themselves, feel appreciated, feel like part of the wave. And that's all of us. That's all we are. Austin, I'm sure, would agree with me. Plenty of other amazing collaborators. I want to give a shout out to Vanilla Sun, who performed at Wake Motif, and he's going to be hosting Zoo Motif. He's going to be headlining Zoo Motif. He has a crazy set he's been preparing, electronic. A lot of it's analog. A lot of it is created from scratch. All of it is his original compositions. It's amazing what he does. So I feel like we're all going to be trying to create a huge, huge splash with another exclusive event where people feel like they're part of it, and they're just being washed in it, and be a cool feeling for all of us again, I think. Yeah, that's the next big stop, August 17th. That's a Saturday. We're going to try and get things going as early as possible. We'll have some kegs, potential wine tasting, hot tub time machine, you name it. We're going to have some crazy stuff going on. And most importantly, trying to get the skate community involved. Basically, we're gonna expand a little bit here and bring a really cool group together.
Just to kind of wrap it all up, I mean, that's a great wrap up in general, but thinking about our whole conversation, your personal, the spiritual, the business angle, and tying it back into F.L.I Productions, the newly anointed F.L.I Productions, F.L.I, the motif sort of, I suppose it hopefully will become a brand, at least within this line of events that you're trying to build.
For sure.
Is there an overarching or sort of a summary approach or a philosophy that you want to kind of spread the word about? Is there a driving force behind the motif? What is the motif, perhaps? So that anybody listening, hopefully we're connecting with, if you were there at Wake, if you're planning to be at Zoo, if you're interested, or, a past fan of Perspectives, or Fake James, or Austin, or whoever you are that's listening, what are we expecting now? Hopefully this is not just going to be a twofer, right? That, that whatever happens in August, that there's something underneath that's growing. I mean, is there a way to sum up your feeling about what this is really about?
Yeah, I mean, without overthinking it or getting too deep, I think the best way to say it is we want our artists to be able to express themselves. We want our audience to be able to express their appreciation. We're always so reserved. I even, it's sometimes it's painful to watch the reaction of world famous musicians coming through, and the audience is like, that's not impressive enough type smug reaction. And case in point, 21 Pilots headlined X Fest a few summers ago, and that's some of the best performers of our day and age right there. It's insane what they did. They put the drummer out on a platform being crowd surfed. The singer showed up on the audio booth on some "now you see me, now you don't" shit, and it was still not quite enough. It's like painful. It's so cringy to watch the reaction, And I think that I'd love to urge people to express their appreciation when they're impressed, when they're blown away. Let it show, like get loud, get vocal, tell that artist how amazing they were, how they, gave you an experience you've never experienced, an emotion that you haven't felt. It's so important to create that environment where the artist can be vulnerable. And I think someone who taught me that was my homie Luke DiDanielli, who was him and I had our own projects going on in the past few years, Escape Art and Subluna Productions. We've put some crazy events on, and our manifesto was create an environment where the artist can be vulnerable, because that's their best performance. Their absolute top performance level is when they can be vulnerable and express themselves. And the best way to create that environment is to know that you are appreciated by the audience. And when you can feel that, your every move feels like it has gravity. And so, if you're going to attend, come with prepared to holler, to lose your voice, to give that love, because that, like you said earlier, that aura is going to be around it. We're curating the right group where you're going to feel the love, so come to expect that, and come ready to let it out,
I was just thinking, for all my struggles with the perspectives and learning about the art scene here in Calgary, the creators are incredible.
Yeah.
But I like the way you put that. I think maybe this is why we're vibing right now on some of these projects. I think our base thought is that we have to encourage people to exchange energies and to not just keep something for themselves. And I'm excited, man. I think it's gonna be dope.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I watched this show, The OA, and it's funny because I heard about it through a guy who was getting his hair cut next to me in a barber shop. He was describing it to the barber, and I could tell the barber was like, I'm definitely not gonna watch that. But he was going, oh yeah, the OA, so spell it out for me, And so I was listening, and it sounded great. So I went home and I started binging it, and it's incredible, man. It changed the way I look at my life. It was written so well by this lady named Britt Marling, who also stars in it. The main thing that stuck with me from that show was a quote. I don't know who she was quoting, but the quote was, "All energy is borrowed. You have to give it back one day." And so I feel like that's that exchange. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because we do need to be vibrating off of each other, sending energy this way, that way, receiving it just constantly. We have to be moving around, We can't be like ice, where the particles aren't moving. We'd be better off being a gaseous entity that's just like the particles are firing around nonstop. It's never in the same place. Yeah, I think that's sort of a great way to conclude how we feel about this event and other events from F.L.I Productions moving forward. Is we're moving, we're shaking it up. We're shakers, we're movers, and we want to appeal to all the other shakers and movers.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for putting on my little lavalier.
Yeah, I hope I didn't scratch my chin too loud there.
Not only that, I hope it actually works. We'll see in post if any of it's salvageable. Final word for you, Vanilla Sun, or anybody. Send me some tracks, man, to use on this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be going over some tracks with Vanilla Sun and creating some really cool promotion material for Zoo Motif. And obviously, keep your ears to the ground for the podcast that Perspectives YYC is working on, and basically give them the love and support, because I think that they're also carving out something that hasn't been done, and I think we should continue to work together. It's gonna be great.
Perspectives YYC is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. The APN is the brainchild of Karen Unland, whose only purpose in life, it seems, is to support and grow local podcasts. Podcasts like Modern Manhood, a series created by Germaine Villagas, focused on the divergent, often negative concept of modern masculinity. He has spent the last 5 years developing this conversation and pulling apart social and cultural influences that seem to drive so many men to despair and shameless self-promotion. I'm on it. I'll briefly on his latest episode to discuss just this, the effect of media tropes on men. Check his work out at modernmanhood.org or through the APN website albertapodcastnetwork.com/social-issues. A quick note from our main sponsor, ATB. ATB takes pride in all Albertans. That means standing up for what is right in the workplace, in our communities, and alongside community partners, including F.L.I in schools, Calgary Libraries Reading with Royalty Program, Edmonton and Calgary Pride, and the Calgary Sexual Health Center. At ATB, we believe pride is a stance for love, diversity, and self-worth. A stance for acceptance in our workplace, in the communities we serve, and with our community partners. Learn more at atb.com/pride.